uprising. Hold on, hold on.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us for this Q&A session with candidates for Madison School Board. My name is Taylor Kilgore, and with us this evening is Savion Castro, the incumbent running unopposed for seat number 2 on the Madison School Board. Also joining us is Maia Pearson, also an incumbent and running unopposed. Maia is seeking re-election to seat number 1.
My name is Leila Fletcher. Like Taylor, I am one of the editors here at Simpson Street Free Press. Asking questions of the candidates this afternoon are 5 local education reporters: Abbey Machtig of the Wisconsin State Journal, Kayla Huynh of the Capital Times, Abigail Leavins from Isthmus and Badger Herald, Sandy Flores Ruiz from Simpson Street Free Press, and Scott Girard, a longtime education reporter from the Cap Times.
Our format is simple. Journalists pose questions to candidates. Each candidate will have 1 minute to respond. Leila and I will moderate. If a candidate wants more than 1 minute to respond, Leila or myself will grant a brief extension for you all. Likewise, our panel of journalists can also ask brief follow-up questions. And then candidates will also be allotted 2 minutes for a closing statement.
Our first question is from Kayla Huynh of the Capital Times.
Yeah, so one thing, as you know, is that schools are struggling with teacher shortages. What strategies do you think the district should take in retaining staff?
All right, Maia, you can go first.
So I think one of the strategies that at least we have as a board been working on is really strengthening our HR department. I know that has been a space where there has been difficulty in that department for some years. So we've worked really hard in trying to make things a lot more mainstream and really focus on the hiring and retention of staff. As far as an actual retention strategy, of course, pay is always one part of it, but we also know that pay is not the end all for teachers and our staff. So making sure that schools have a really good climate that staff are working in, ensuring that they have a voice in some of the decisions that are happening within their schools, building really strong leadership at our school level. So our principals and our school teams.
We're at time, Maia. Would you like an extension?
Nope, I'm good. Let's go.
Thank you. Savion.
Thank you. Very, very prompt. So I kind of view this as needing a long-term approach and a short-term approach. You know, building the next generation of educators is not going to happen overnight. So one thing that I think we're all excited about is we're investing in the grow your own initiative here in Madison for local students and other school staff who may want to be a teacher but don't necessarily have the roadmap to get there because we have to pay money for people to go to college. So we want to invest more in the grow your own program. And then, as Maia alluded to, we want to have the most competitive wage and benefit package possible. And I also think that we have to really look at teaching as becoming a burnout job for a lot of people just because of the demands of the role. And so keeping an eye on staff, mental health, and wellness, being conscious of what we're asking folks to do. And so for an example, last year with the letters training and
that's time.
Professional development. Sorry, if I just can get 10 seconds.
Go ahead.
Yeah, we just had to toe the line on, so for example, we made some PD days, mental health days instead. And so it's kind of that push and pull with knowing when staff might be feeling more burned out and not pushing folks as hard.
Thank you. Our next question is from Scott Girard.
Thanks very much. Now that the superintendent search has concluded, I was wondering if either of you could reflect on the process a little bit and where you think it could have been improved, whether that's transparency, how you search for candidates, really anything that you just think as you reflect on the process that could have been done better.
And Savion, you can go first this time.
Yeah, we had this conversation at our last board retreat, and I think we executed our process pretty well. One thing that I think we can improve upon is, the idea was floated, and I have been washing it around in my head, is about having a blind interview process for the final round with the community. And I think one thing we can improve upon is a better we can the board knowing when the superintendent's going to retire. I think some of us were kind of caught by surprise, so having more anticipation for when a superintendent will retire, and then us and the board being able to take a proactive approach for the line of succession.
Maia, go ahead.
Yeah, like Savion, we definitely talked pretty intensively about this past weekend. And one takeaway that I think we could have done a little better, we were really trying to stay strong and hold the integrity of the process as much as possible. But what that meant sometimes was that we didn't necessarily have the best communication outward. Because we tried to we have built it so that, we have the community sessions that people can engage. And I think looking back, I think one thing that we could have improved was having more communication amongst the community and us, especially when we got closer to that last group of candidates. But I think we worked really hard on the process. I am grateful for the community that showed up to participate, whether they were doing the interviews or they submitted questions. And it's the first time that I've seen this kind of process happen at our school district. So kudos to us, but also kudos to the community.
Thank you. Our next question is from Sandy Flores Ruiz from Simpson Street Free Press. Sandy actually just won first place in the Wisconsin Civics Games essay competition put on by the Wisconsin Newspapers Association. Go ahead, Sandy.
Thank you. We're wondering if MMSD has an official policy committee. There have been references to a policy committee in board docs and from school board members on social media, but no policy committee meetings or recordings are posted, nor are any policy meetings publicly noticed. Can you please comment or explain?
Maia, you can go first.
Yeah, so interestingly enough, Savion and I are part of the policy committee. It is just 2 board members. So when it comes to having to legally notice our policy committee meetings, which consist of Savion and I, the superintendent rep, and then our legal counsel, we're not necessarily have to publicly notice them. However, if that is something that we can take in consideration for them. For the future. We don't necessarily determine the policy in our policy committee meetings. It's literally mostly around formulating what the list might be based off of board input. And it is a shared task amongst other board members. So it's not just only the policy committee determining what is happening. It's just that it's a way for us to kind of help mainstream some of the work that needs to be done for the board. So we're not making decisions and approving the policies in those meetings. Those will happen in our regular board meetings and our regular work group meetings. It's just the process part. So hopefully that answers your question.
Thank you. Savion?
Yeah, let's see, what day was it? Oddly enough, 2 weeks ago, we did have a notice and recorded meeting regarding a policy on a Friday morning where we talked about a slate of policies that will be coming to the work groups for the next 3 months. As Maia said, her and I both serve on that committee, and ultimately, any policy that the board passes has to go through the 2 public meetings with public input and then pass at the regular board meeting.
I have a quick follow-up for you guys. Should the public be allowed to view discussions about changing MMSD policies?
Oh, yeah, and they do.
Yeah, and I agree as well. Again, Savion and I don't necessarily have those conversations about changing the policy per se. Like if you take one policy, we're not the ones determining it. We're just kind of help mainstream as to like gearing the work towards to the board. And then those are all open for anyone to participate in.
Yeah, just for reference, we have about, I think the estimate was about like 100 hours of staff time of backlog policies that we're trying to take on with an understaffed legal department on top of their regular day-to-day responsibilities to the district. And so when Maia and I convene with staff, it's about tackling the logistics of that big pull. But at the end of the day, any policy that the board passes or revises or rescinds has to go through 2 public meetings, which go through the work groups anyway, and then pass the board meeting at the end of the month, which the public has access to.
Thank you. The next question will be from Abbey Machtig from the Wisconsin State Journal.
Thank you. The 2024-25 budget cycle promises to be especially challenging, as I'm sure you both know. And the district kind of continues to cite Wisconsin's system for funding education as one of the main causes of this financial strain. But from your perspective, how much responsibility should fall on the board and the district to make cuts internally in order to balance its budget?
Yeah, I mean, as a district, we're kind of on the bone in that there is no quote unquote harmless cuts. I mean, anywhere from 83 to 85% of our budget is staff costs. So we could cut the rest of that 15% and still face budget challenges. And so we want to do the hard task of like taking care of people. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll just echo what Savion said. I think it is there will be difficult decisions that are happening. My hope is that we try our best not to have them as close to the classroom as possible. But as he alluded to, even if you were to cut the 15% or even less, we will still be in a pretty difficult financial situation.
Thank you. The next question will be from Abigail Leavins from Isthmus and the Badger Herald.
Hi, I have a question along that similar vein on the subject of the budget and wages for teachers. I'm curious what y'all think about the union's request for an over 4% wage increase, and if you think that's fair or what you think teachers' wages should be.
Maia, you can go.
So are you meaning just the cost of living increase? Okay, because I hadn't heard of like a 4+ if you don't include the 1%, like the 4.12% portions of that. Obviously, our teachers are extremely important. They are the ones who are helping mold the minds of our children. And so it would be great to ensure that they are taken care of monetarily, but also in all the other ways, including, as Savion alluded to earlier, and I think a lot of us on the board agree, mental health and other supports for teachers as well. So the wages is important, and these other pieces are equally important as well. So trying to find investments for that as well.
Yeah, I think as a normative statement, as things should be, teachers should be paid a lot more, but as a positive statement, as things are, we have to operate within the constraints of state law and national law, which is an entirely different ballgame. Right now in our current budget, we have already provided an increase for steps and lanes, which is an average 2% wage increase for teachers throughout the step and lane kind of schedule. When it comes to COLA, I can say those negotiations are ongoing, and the board and the district will be pursuing avenues to raise revenue so that we can pay people.
Can I ask a follow-up?
Yeah.
To what Maya said about wages being important, but also supporting the mental health and these other factors that might need to be included in the budget, I'm wondering if you have thoughts on which of those like needs to be like priority ordered.
That's a good question. I mean, right now, this current year, we're trying to navigate COLA, and we have ongoing negotiations with our healthcare providers, and so we want to minimize the healthcare increase that will be put upon the district by healthcare providers, which is unfortunate this year. We want to have a school calendar that teachers like. So for example, this is kind of a new development, but we negotiate the school calendar with MTI nowadays, so we get their input there. And I just want to recognize my positionality in answering this statement, and that I am not a teacher in MMSD, but I do my best to listen to teachers in MMSD and figure out what we should try to prioritize. What we're hearing right now is wages. What we're hearing right now is they want to simplify the initiatives coming out of central office, so they don't feel overburdened by a new initiative every year. So simplifying that regard, and also have that.
It's time, Savion.
Sorry.
Okay, good. Maia, did you want to follow up or respond to the follow-up question at all?
No, I think Savion captured it, and if I can yield my time to him if he wants to finish.
Yeah.
Yes, you can have more time.
Sorry, I was going to say, being in constant communication about professional development days too, on when those days should be mental health days instead. And giving teachers like a vision to believe in, like a mission that everyone can believe in, to like feeling like they're making a difference in the world. So that having like a vision from the ground up is really important.
Thank you. All right, our next question will be from Kayla.
Yeah, what do you think the district can improve upon in supporting students with disabilities?
Savion, you can go first.
Yeah, I think one, we need to always keep an eye on the ratio of special ed teachers and special ed support staff in every school, so we can ensure that every child with an IEP is getting the support that they need, and holding school staff accountable to the IEP plan too. Another thing is promoting inclusive education practices, so long that as it fits like the actual needs of each individual child, and really listening to parents of these students is really important in the establishment of the IEP process in general. It can feel very overwhelming for a parent to walk into an IEP meeting, and making those IEP meetings as inclusive as possible is really important.
Yeah, in a similar vein as Savion, I am a parent with a child that has a IEP, and I think for me, one of the biggest things was the knowledge that goes into understanding the process as a parent myself, and then having the space and latitude to advocate for my child. So making sure that families know what the process looks like, how the process works, but then also being able to advocate for their child in real time, to get all those basic needs met. And when a parent is looking to hold the team accountable, and those who are instrumental in that process, that accountability actually happens. And yeah, and then I would say also like inclusive environments, and making sure that students with the disabilities also are part of our school days, and that they're not in the out of classroom time is not overwhelming, that they are included and also participating.
Thank you. Our next question is from Scott.
Thanks very much. With the district exploring a referendum this fall and the city doing the same right now, I was curious what you both think the communication should look like between the school district and the city as fall approaches.
Maia, you go first.
Yeah, so Savion, I'm sure will like expand on this because that's his area at this moment. But I think the district and the city have been obviously in conversations even prior to them announcing. And I think we kind of have to be working together because we will, with both of our referendums, increase the taxes on folks. So I think it is important that that happens. And we are right now in the process of developing what that might look like. And so I'll go ahead and let Savion go because he'll probably speak more to that.
Yeah, we're both kind of doing a two-step. No, I think it's really important that the city and district have a relationship always. In this regard, you know, we're still finalizing final numbers, whether there's a unified campaign or not, whether that makes strategic sense or not, has yet to be determined. But we are definitely cognizant of the combined tax impact that two referenda will have on taxpayers in Madison.
Thank you. The next question is from Sandy.
Thank you. During public comments at a recent school board meeting, former Fitchburg mayor and longtime officer in the local NAACP, Kirby Mack, asked whether board members were comfortable with the low scores of Black and Brown students. According to Wisconsin DPI, only about 39% of K through 12 students in Madison are proficient or advanced in reading. And only 8.8% of Black and Brown students are proficient or advanced in reading. Are you satisfied with the progress of MMSD has made in its transitions to science-based reading instruction, and what can you do as a member of a local board to accelerate the progress?
No, not satisfied with the progress. That's why I still want to serve on the board and will work in education beyond my time on this board. What I think we can do right now as a board is continue to follow the best reading practices as the science comes out. So switching to the science of reading, as I alluded to earlier, you know, there's a balance with rolling that out with the professional development required. And I think we need to continue to diversify our teacher staff. So grow your own programs, and our most diverse buckets of staff are those in non-teaching positions. So allowing them to advance to become full-time teachers in the district, and then making our schools as culturally responsive as possible to our Black students is really important. And providing a sense of agency for parents to advocate for their children on a day-to-day basis so that they know they have an ear in the classroom or in the school or even on the school board.
Yeah, thank you for Savion for saying that. I think for me, Savion and I both graduated from Madison schools, and I am definitely not satisfied. I haven't been satisfied even as a student. My mom wasn't satisfied when I was a kid. And I currently also have children who are in the district. So it definitely rings, it comes to heart significantly. I think one thing, as Savion also mentioned, so I won't go over those things, but one thing I think that we can definitely do as board members is continue to invest in programs like the Grow Your Own, but also find ways that community can come into our schools in a greater capacity. So it's not just only when something happens, but they're constantly building the relationships with the schools that are maybe that they find a relationship. So if we have like Urban League, it's in South Madison, why not have them doing programming at James C. Wright, which is down the street. So just finding ways that our community partners can have a greater stake because our children aren't only within our schools, they are also community members as well. And then I think another way that we can is utilize our positions as electeds with other electeds, like in the city council and our county, to see greater investments from them to ensure that. Can I finish my statement? Yeah. To ensure that programming exists for our students outside of school. And I think that, you know, once the whole child is addressed, then I think things get better for them.
I have a quick follow-up. So how closely are school board members watching the district's pivot to science of reading, and what are the next steps in this transition?
So we do get updates from our instruction work groups, and we do get updates in our weekly updates that are also public. You can find them in board docs. And I think for us, I think what we can do a better job is as a board set actual goals that we want and that we can measure. But we definitely are monitoring it. And I think we participate. And at least for me, I speak for myself, I go and meet with some of the schools that I'm assigned to and talk to them about how the science of reading is helping their schools.
Yeah, so let me think. We adopted the new reading curriculum in spring 21. Textbooks hit the schools 22, 23, it's 23, 24 now. So we're in like 18 months in of this. And so in about 8 more months, we should be able to get some incoming data to see the progress. We get reports on percent of staff who have received that professional development to adapt their instruction. And that also goes along with our incoming teachers too. We've been working with the UW School of Education so that they are also teaching to teach phonics as they come into MMSD too. So trying to attack it from or address it from all levels of the system.
Thank you. The next question will be from Abby.
Thank you. The board has recently revisited its 2040 sustainability goal, and those estimates show that each of the scenarios being considered would cost hundreds of millions of dollars and require multiple school closures each year. So I'm curious how you all plan to meet this goal while minimizing disruptions to students and to families, and the potential burden on local taxpayers.
Maia?
Yeah, that's a golden question, Abby. I think we have really been working hard on our long range facility plan and really trying to ensure like what schools would be a priority if we needed to close them. I think where we all have to come to consensus on exactly is if we are going to update the actual wording of our resolution, changing just some points. I think for me, I can speak for myself, is like it is definitely urgent that we address it, but at the same time, even by addressing it, we want to make sure that there is less disruption. And so it's just finding what the balance is. But I think once we get closer to the finalization of our facilities plan, and then also like what our referendum looks like. So there's a lot of components that goes into that and what it would actually cost to, because our schools are so old, like what would cost them to get to just par, like just at ground zero, and then what do we need to do to get them to that sustainability piece. So I think it's a heavy lift on our part, and there's a lot of factors that are going into it.
Yeah, it definitely presents some real dilemmas as a policy maker. For example, there was that one scenario where we may have had to close 9 schools in 1 year, and it really makes me rethink building a city on an isthmus with so few available land. And I think we're going to need a lot of community input on what folks are willing to live with, because there will be some level of instruction, but at the end of the day, I want to prioritize learning in this. So yeah, that we have the long range facility plan, like survey and focus groups going out on what folks in the community are willing to live with. But at this point, when we're in these kind of dilemmas, I want to lean on voice from the community. But when it comes to there are things that impact learning that we can do that will reduce our emissions, that will improve learning, like replacing light bulbs, improving HVAC systems, or water boilers in schools, things like that, that make us more efficient and also improve the learning environments.
Thank you. The next question is from Abigail.
Hi, I want to go back to kind of talking about the superintendent search and issues in like things that came up about transparency. And I wanted to hear from you guys, honestly, how you think MMSD has been doing well in terms of transparency in areas that maybe you could still grow in.
One area where I do think we improved was we did fill and hire the public information officer in our district. So we're improving the turnaround time for public records requests. We are cleaning out that backlog, which is really important. I still think we should talk about the public records policy. I think that might come out next fall, hopefully. I also think that we can just improve school to parent communication on a day-to-day basis always. And I'll let Maia talk.
Yeah, I mean, Savion alluded to already the part of the backlog of some of the public records, and I feel like that was part of the transparency issue. I do think that we have, and I would hope that you all on here also feel the same, that the relationship with journalism in our public has been a lot better with our communications team. And so hopefully it's better. And I think what we can always do better is just always listening and trying to take what folks are saying and trying to work out what the solutions to that may be. And so if it's, the communication between, if something happens at a school, like communicating with parents, how can we always make sure that that is better? How can we make sure that the students are also receiving information? Because I think that that's also been an area where it's been somewhat difficult. And so the transparency issue for me is just not only, to our journalists in our district or public records to our district, it's all the different facets of communication throughout the district, even to us as board members. And so we can always be doing better. I don't think there's a perfect communication channel anywhere. If that was the case, we would all be so informed at this point. There wouldn't need to be communication. I don't know. So yeah.
If I can just take 15 seconds. Yeah, I think the most important line of communication is between the parent, child, and the teacher principal at each individual school. As a board, I think we can really improve on how we communicate the why of our decisions with the press. It's hard. It's a legitimate challenge for the board to make a unified statement for a whole host of reasons. And so the board really, when we make a decision, being able to make a unified statement as a board is something that we can improve upon.
Thank you. We have one final question from Abigail.
Sorry, the next question I have is, in terms of with the new superintendent being hired, what are maybe some positive changes you foresee happening in the next few years?
Maia, you can go first.
Yeah, I mean, I think what can definitely happen, which I'm excited about, is finding ways that we work really well together. It sounds like the board for our new superintendent relationships were pretty positive. So really focusing on how do we build that and how do we kind of build a new future, I guess, for Madison kids and our families. I think it is a real opportunity now as we are coming out of the pandemic to be able to do that. I think, Dr. Gothard has a lot of experience around language in schools and a lot of experience around how to create better outcomes for children of color. So I'm excited to see what that relationship builds out to be, not just for us in the superintendent, but also for the community. Again, we are in the process of that transition. So there are some really big hopes that we have, and I'm excited.
Yeah, I think I'm excited that we have an opportunity to improve the learning experiences and the academic outcomes for all of our students and teachers here in Madison. I'll just put it plainly. I think Madison has struggled with the just ever increasing diversity of the district that goes for city leaders in the city itself. I think Dr. Gothard has a track record of meeting the needs of a big diverse student body in a city like St. Paul. I think he's brought some very innovative ideas to the table, like a magnet school for groups of students, or making homeless funds for students who are experiencing homelessness. So just bringing new ideas to the table. And I think he brings a level of credibility that will improve the trust between the community and the district. And I think that foundation is most important, because this can't just come from us. It's got to be a bottom-up process with the people most impacted.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Oh.
I have a quick question going off of what the two of you were saying. So Simpson Street Free Press has covered issues surrounding access to advanced learning opportunities for students of color. And I wanted to ask you, if the topic of eliminating standalone honors comes before the board again, how will you vote?
Yeah, well, as my past vote indicated, I support earned honors, and I would hope that we have an improved plan for implementing that, so all board members can vote for it, and I would vote for that again. I do not believe in segregated honors.
Yeah, and likewise as Savion, I would stay with my vote as well. Well, sort of. But I would definitely go with earned honors, or find out a better way to do advanced learning, especially in the high schools. But also I think for me, the conversation is also how can we expand what advanced learning looks like, even from like 4K on up. So, I mean, my kids were identified pretty early on and didn't really have access to any of that. And now they're in middle school going to high school next year. So I'm definitely in the realm of not having the segregated advanced honors classes or advanced learning opportunities, but really trying to figure out like ways that all of our students can participate, because all of our students are capable.
Yeah, just to expand further, I mean, I don't want to speak for anybody, but I had teachers from all of our 4 comprehensive high schools disappointed in that decision because they were excited about taking on earned honors and saw firsthand that students were capable of more learning. It's just exposure and believing in people.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. So now we'll go into closing remarks. Each candidate will have 2 minutes now for their closing remarks, and we will start with Maia.
Okay, and so yeah, I ran originally for school board in 2020. It's such a long time ago, it feels like. And the things that I felt were really strong then, I still feel very strong today. You know, as a 3rd generation Madisonian, it has been very difficult being a student in MMSD, but also being a parent in MMSD. And so I think we can definitely expand and make that the experience for students in our schools a lot better, as well as the staff. And I don't want to say like only teachers, because we all know that teachers are one part of the puzzle, but we have our hourly staff and our other staff like custodians and our food service folks who also are very, who also are important and impact our students as well. The things that I am still looking to do is expand 4K, but also the funding for 4K, and my hopes in trying to get it as close to fully funded as possible, because we know that learning definitely starts, access to learning starts that young. I also want to make sure that we are working to have a better budget and really trying to get our community inputs in our possible referendums in the future, the referendum in the future. And one of the things that I really wanted to focus on was our superintendent search, but we are now done with that. So again, kudos to us, but also kudos to the community for that. So the next steps with that, I find that are important, is making sure that we have a good onboarding process for our superintendent, and that we can ensure that there's a smooth transition from our interim. And thank you to Lisa Quistad, who answered the call at that time. So I'm really excited for this next term of my school board tenure, because there's a lot of change, but change isn't always has to be negative. It can also definitely be positive. And I'm looking forward to seeing what we can do with new leadership and the opportunities that we may have, especially if we can pass a referendum. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. So just a little bit about me. I was raised in a family of African-American teachers and educators. My aunt was a principal. My great aunt was a speech and language therapist. My uncle was a janitor in public schools. My grandma was a Sunday school teacher. And so from just a young age, I was told to get a good education because they can't take that away from you. And so what that means for people who have been dispossessed and disenfranchised to still have that very important part of your dignity is very important. And that's the spirit that I want to bring to the board. Is I believe in education can confer a sense of dignity and agency to everyone who can experience learning. And so that's what I aspire for all of our schools. I think Madison and education in America in general has a history of disenfranchising Black and brown students from the education system. And that's what I think we all want to change and overturn and fight against. And so while I'm on the board, while I serve on the board, I will act as a lifelong learner. I will try my best to listen to the voices and concerns of the community as we mold a new education system here in Madison, so that every student has a meaningful experience with learning and education here in our system. There are specific policies that I believe are particularly important, as Maia talked about, continuing to build on full day 4K. I want to build on our community schools because they believe in the whole child as a learner. And I want to continue to dismantle the school to prison pipeline. I think that historically that schools have acted as a pipeline to the incarceration system is a betrayal of what it means to be a learner. And I don't want our schools to be that. It's not been perfect, but that's what I want to advocate for. And that's what I believe as a value when it comes to individual policies. For example, the sustainability resolution, I think we really have to act hand in hand with the community. But my core values is that I want education to be a tool where people can get dignity and self-determination from.
Well, thank you to both candidates for answering our questions. And thank you to our panel of local education journalists for participating in this Q&A. And of course, thank you to our audience for tuning in. Please remember to vote on April 2nd. And of course, never ever hand in your first draft.